Okay, it's time for the Q&A with me and Adam on the psychological and physiological demands of competing. So I am going to get Adam in here. He just joined, so let's add him. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. All right. Yay,
Good
Adam!
to see you. How are you?
I'm great. I was thinking before we hopped on, I was like, usually me and Adam chit chat for like a decent amount of times before our calls or our recordings. So it's great to do this live and be able to share this with others.
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound good.
Perfect.
All right, you guys. So what's up, Madeline? We've got a lot of awesome people on here. Jenna, thank you all for joining us. Man, this is so cool. So Kat, hello. We have been doing a series over on YouTube on the physiological and psychological demands of competing. And if you guys haven't caught that yet, you can catch that on either of our YouTube profiles. But we decided that we would go live as our little finale of this series. So if you guys have any questions for us that you want to ask today, definitely drop them into the comments. We did get one question earlier, so I actually think this would be interesting, Adam, to hear your perspective first, because you're a competitor too. Did you prefer improvement season or prep more? Hold on, guys. He lost his connection. 1 second. There he is.
Yeah, I'm not sure why I cut out, but I think you were asking if I enjoyed improvement or prep season.
Yeah, when you were in it, it was just one of the questions we got.
Gosh, I think I liked them both for different reasons. Uh, the structure prep is really nice, but I do think that I enjoyed, like, in a weird way, the feeling of going to the gym in the off season and just training to kind of oblivion and almost being scared of, like, what am I going to do to myself today to make myself better, and just kind of thinking competitively of, my first show, not getting first call outs and seeing all the other guys on the sidelines go in. And those guys that beat me really motivated me to be better. And I, now that I no longer compete, I throw that drive into my competitors in a, positive manner. And I really do like trying to keep people engaged and motivated in the off season. So I think I do a good job at doing that. So maybe if I had to choose one, maybe the off season a little bit more.
Yeah, I think you do a great job of it. As your client, I can speak to that. And I definitely feel motivated in the improvement season. And kind of like going back to one of the topics we had covered in the series, I feel that we've established such a longevity based approach where I can do this for a long time because I feel so aligned with what I'm being asked to do. And I think you provide that to a lot of us. And I'm personally, like, as far as what I prefer, I think both have their benefits. I had a similar experience to you actually at my first show. I remember thinking, like, yeah, I crushed it. It was awesome, whatever. And then they're doing all the call outs, and I'm like, oh, I'm not on this. And when they did the awards, it was like you're just standing on the side and they're like pulling you off the stage, and you're like, okay, well, never mind. I have a lot of work to do, which is great and it's humbling. And I think that's a reminder that we got to love this lifestyle to pursue, be challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, we really do.
So, how have you personally handled when a client maybe has a rough time coming off of the stage from a physiological perspective and a psychological perspective? Like if they maybe don't get the call out they were expecting or the placement they were hoping for?
Yeah, it's it's difficult. A lot of that depends on what was our, conversation going into the show. Were we, going to win? Did I accidentally tell my client I thought they would, be top five in a national show and they end up being sixth? It happens. And kind of basing what that expectation is ahead of time could really change how I resolve the down of being off of stage. But a couple things that come into mind just in a general perspective when we're looking at psychology and physiology. So, you know, one, how was the process going into the show? Did we feel like we did everything we could? Were there some things we maybe could have done better? Um, we need to be realistic, as just as if you're playing for the Astros, if you played horrible defense or maybe had bad posing, like these are things that we need to work on. And it doesn't even necessarily mean that that client did anything wrong. Maybe they did at that moment, but they practiced enough and they did everything that they should have leading up to the show. So we just need to say, how do we work together to make sure that we don't mess this up on game day? Maybe we need to come in a little bit leaner. Maybe tan was too dark. These are all things that I think can really, help a coach client relationship grow together, and you learn, more importantly, what that client needs, even though maybe everything seems seemingly perfect a week out, because it happens in a subjective sport. And sometimes you don't change anything and you just get a different opinion of judges. And it doesn't necessarily mean the judges were wrong. You're just in a different lineup, a new group of people, and a second shot at success.
Definitely. I think that expectations are very key, and how a coach communicates those with their client really matters. And also for a coach to be able to say you're not where we need to be, but it's still maybe worth seeing what the judges think of this look, even if it's different than your past. But there's also times, one of your clients commented here that they appreciated your level of honesty of like, let's not get on stage. You're not going to be ready for a show that you have in mind. And I think that's a very powerful thing, because I personally did not have that experience with my previous coach, and I was put on stage and I knew in my heart I shouldn't do it. I just knew, and I was like, this is going to be the worst look ever on stage. And it was the worst look ever. Somehow it got me qualified for nationals. Why? Because there were only two people. So we have to be conscious of not just what we're bringing, but our experience too, and being willing to communicate that. And like you said, things can change in a matter of a week, or even just, I mean, you have life experiences too that come up, maybe a new stressor, or maybe the body surprises you. Have you actually had that before, where someone's body just does something you were not expecting?
I think in general, like sometimes when you're loading food, some people will look better or they just tighten up way more than you would have even liked them to. So then, this is why the peaking process should change or be monitored 3 times a day, like we do, to kind of stay ahead of that stuff. Uh, One thing is sometimes seeing somebody's structure in person versus like just pictures, or having someone towards the tail couple weeks send videos versus photos. That's something I'm really big on, because how do these motions and transitions look? And then, kind of going back to that, coaches are not always perfect. And sometimes clients have an expectation because they worked with another coach and they maybe did something that that other coach liked. Um, if people bring up realistic things, I'm like willing to do those, because I've had people like, hey, I'd really like a call end of the night during peak week because I panic. And it's like, I can do that. If you're just asking for a week of that, I don't think that's too much to ask. And someone actually asked me that because their old coach, that was how they kind of followed up the day. And I was like, it's a chance for me to get better. Maybe I might do that with all of my clients, but since she specifically asked for it, I was like, I want to deliver. And I think some people don't give you the opportunity. They're just like, well, they don't do that. And it's like, well, if I don't know that you maybe want that, and coaching is a dynamic approach. And I think that as long as it's pretty realistic, coaches should be able to deliver it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the problem happens when someone is set and this is how our peak is going to look. And so you just execute and then you don't hear from the coach or that's what you think is supposed to be. There's a reason you have people checking in on a consistent basis so you can see and make adjustments. Like me and you made adjustments in our last preps or our last prep in the different peak weeks we did. And it was awesome to experience that and see those changes. And I think you also made a point about the posing side of things. And I noticed that sometimes people feel really, really confident and comfortable sending a posing video or posing with their posing coach. And then it all goes out the window when they step on stage. And I think it's really important to practice posing. This is more so on that mental side of things to gear up for how do you present yourself on stage. Practice with maybe like YouTube videos that are actually going with a show, like you're watching a show on YouTube. Practice along with that and along with the judges' cues. And then also get used to doing it in the middle of the gym or in front of other people or invite other friends that you know who might compete or family members, because there's nothing like that moment when you're literally about to step on stage and you're like, oh my gosh, you could do it so many times and still get that feeling. So being able to cope under that type of pressure and emotional experience, because you did just put a lot of work into this, so it can be emotional too. Being able to manage that is really key. So that way, everything you've been showing to your coach and checking in with, and they've been monitoring, and same with your posing coach, actually gets displayed on stage. And then make sure that if it doesn't happen, you regroup with your coaches versus saying like, everything's messed up, no one helped me get where I wanted to be. It's like, let's look at the whole picture first.
Absolutely. It's just like in track and field. If you hit a hurdle, we're going to work on drills to keep you from hitting that hurdle again. And I think visualizing the process, just like we were talking about messing up on stage, some people just don't think into the detail. Like, you're going to be wearing a number and that number is going to get called. And I had clients say that they're like, I didn't think about my number getting called. And for whatever reason, said she visualized everything else except for that small detail. That just really like shocked her. Like, oh my God, I'm number 31. And she's like, I just never thought about that process. And that's fine, but I recommend people watch shows and try to visualize everything, know what your fears are, turn those things into confidence, and really try not to overcompensate.
So true. Yeah, I definitely overcompensated at my first show. I think I just got too excited, you know. That was so long ago though, so a lot of people were just doing whatever on stage. Like that was when the flair was when the pizzazz was pretty normal, but yeah. You've got a lot of people here saying hi, which is awesome.
Yes, good to see you guys.
Aw. This is cool. Well, you guys, if you have any questions you want us to cover, just let us know. Drop them. We're just kind of chit-chatting in the meantime about different subjects as they come up. But feel free to let us know some of your experiences or some of the questions you might have. If there's a struggle you've faced in prep or in your improvement season that you want some insight from a coach and from a mentor on, then let us know. You know, we'd love to support you. And that's why we're doing this. And that's why we did the series, which was super awesome because I feel like we got into a lot of these nitty gritty subjects that aren't often covered. And one of the things that I wanted to personally follow up with was on the dieting side, because I have now had multiple clients tell me this has been their experience where they feel as soon as they go into their improvement season, they still have to have the prep expectations. They still have to be perfect and 110%. So the moment they're not, it's that all or nothing pendulum to now, well, screw it, I already messed up, I'm just going to go eat everything off plan. Or they look in the mirror and they don't like what they see. So they're like, oh, I already ruined everything. How do you personally as a coach handle those situations? And then maybe I can share mine after that.
Yeah, genetics are always really going to be a factor with this. And there's a lot of perfectionism in this sport. So it is going to be really individual in the specifics of how we, treat that. Sometimes you have to meet people psychologically, like a psychological metabolism. they've
Mm.
spent 20 to maybe 30 weeks not having a meal out with their family and friends. And maybe we look into keeping weekly macros a little bit lower so they can enjoy that one day. But can they enjoy that one day appropriately, hopefully? And then this is where we just have to really let them know there's so many weeks ahead versus weeks behind you. And we understand that you're battling those pains. So sometimes you have to meet them psychologically where their metabolism is. The ideal is to do a really slow reverse diet, but sometimes you might have to go into what I like to call recovery diet. How high can we just put the macros, keep them to kind of maintain their weight, and then maybe a little lower just for some added weekend flexibility. That tends to be the like American standard. Everything's really structured Monday through Friday. Weekends are a little iffy, and I have a lot of professional adults that kind of falls into their, you know, lifestyle a little bit more. So I would say I really treat it that way, and then just making sure that we're improving the idea behind the food and the fuel, and maybe even working a client to 3 days off a week from tracking. And you can still make progress. You just have to watch the trends, but you also have to really understand that the first couple weeks when you make a giant shift from tracking Monday through Sunday versus maybe Monday through Thursday, potentially that is going to shift quite a few of weekly average variables that you just have to watch trend for a couple weeks before you really jump ship or get too emotional about a weight spike, because you're probably going to see that spike, but you're also going to see a taper down. But you're also going to see a slow accumulation of body weight, which is normal. So I think the hardest thing is teaching clients that is not wrong, because they just spent so much time losing weight and getting rewarded for it, where now you're moving up, and no matter how perfect they are on that imperfect plan, it feels wrong because they're going the opposite direction.
That's right. It's like a red flag in their mind, like, oh, this is no longer good because I was rewarded for so long for losing the weight. And I like how you use the term mental metabolism and meeting clients where they're at psychologically, because when someone is dealing with maybe almost like missing part of their life before prep, because we have to admit it can get really intense in a prep. It's not always just sunshine and rainbows. Like, there's a lot of times where you're putting other things aside, even if it's for a short time, depending on family dynamics or relationship dynamics, that can make an impact. And someone who maybe is struggling with binging or overeating or constantly going off plan post show, doing a very slow reverse might benefit from going into a recovery diet where they don't feel mentally calorically restricted and they can improve it. And then you made another great point, which was that when you are maybe choosing to stop tracking or take a break at least for a bit, or not every day of the week, you have to be mentally prepared. I always say you have to be able to accept what you can expect. You can expect that you're not going to be perfect at intuitive, or like you say, intelligent eating right off the bat. So it's going to come with some different outcomes that maybe you're not expecting, but you really should. It's not going to be easy to all of a sudden know all your hunger cues when you've ignored them. It's not going to be easy to know exactly what food is going to make you feel your best, which is why personally, from a psychological perspective, I highly encourage you during your preps, during your improvement seasons, take note of these things. Take note of your hunger fullness levels. Take note of what foods are making you feel really good versus not. This way we can move away from it just being about what fits into my macros to what's helping me to perform, what's helping me to function, and what do I really need or get from this food. Because food is not just fuel either, right? It is experiences, it's culture, it's enjoyment, it's memories. We don't want to rely on it for those emotional needs. So if we want to avoid relying on it, we have to also satisfy emotions in other ways. but have this awareness. So when you want to take a break from tracking, you have so many other things you can trust yourself with, and you have proof that you know these things and how to implement them.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can really develop a sense of security with knowing a lot about your food. And another thing I'll point on is people think of it as a race on who can get the leanest. Well, in the reverse phase, I like to think of it as a race of how fast can I hormonally get you to recover. And currently, right now, because I've had I think, a rather large shift in the types of people who are reaching out to me for coaching. There's been girls who have been in reverse diets for over a year, and they're coming to me and they're showing me their blood work, and they're not hormonally recovered yet because their coach never looked into it, or they were still training 7 days a week, and or the coach just thought reverse dieting was enough. And you really don't know. You're just kind of taking a test. And a lot of these girls are entering prep, they're not losing, and they don't know why. And then it's like you were never hormonally optimized before you started your prep in the first place.
So we had a question come through from 31B_KS. Is there an ideal macro/caloric range you prefer to work a client up to in off season before cutting or prepping?
Not necessarily. It's always great to get high on the macros, right? As high as possible. But it's not like I'm looking for a specific number per athlete. And what we're really looking for is that hormonal restoration, or, potentially sometimes clients are on TRT and you may not necessarily need to go super high with that endogenous response, or maybe they're muscular enough and they had just a little bit of a conditioning issue. I may not take them away too far from where we were, because we just want to strike again a little bit leaner next season. So, you can't be too algorithmic with your like kind of off-season planning with everyone, because it's really going to depend on them, their division criteria. What if they're going into wellness? We're probably going to need a little bit more time, and those numbers might get really, really high. They might get high in any division, even if it's a smaller bikini competitor. Bikini competitors can sometimes eat a lot, so it just really depends, right?
Yeah, no, that's 100% true. I think a lot of people in this industry are foodies, or enjoy food, or gain experiences through food. Like, we enjoy it. We're not like not everyone in this industry is a freak of nature who has no appetite and doesn't enjoy food, right? Like, there's a reason why we make things taste good and we enjoy. I mean, there's a lot of people in the world who can look at a rice cake on peanut butter and be like, this is amazing. So we definitely have an enjoyment. And this actually, I see Giancarlo join. I don't know if he's still on, but he had made a post about how his improvement season weight was high, got to trust the process. And I really appreciated that, because I've had similar experiences, and yet we came in so conditioned last year. Like, you got me dialed, and obviously we want to be productive in our improvement season, and you're putting me in a better spot. But I'm going to ask you something maybe a little controversial, and I'd love to just get your take on it. What's your opinion on like weight gain in an improvement season? And is there a too high if done in a meticulous way? Like, that you're working with someone who's tracking, who's following through, who's showing up in the gym. There's not a lot of those variables in question. So do you have hey, this is our cap now?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think a lot of people do. And actually, in Giancarlo's case, a lot of people were telling him that he was too high, and he got leaner than probably anyone ever. And I will agree, from an outsider looking in who probably didn't look at Giancarlo's data, you know, I maybe would question it, but I knew he had the capacity to get lean enough. So you do have those people who do have a little bit faster metabolism. Caitlin, I was able to take up pretty high. She has really great distribution of body fat, though, which is nice. And then I have a girl, Arlena, who's up 40 pounds, but you would never guess. And I'm completely confident we're going to be able to shed that weight very easily. So Yeah, there is a point of maybe not no return, but you may want to do like a mini cut before you actually start your process. Uh, However, hopefully, I never overshoot that if the person is really doing what they're supposed to be doing. So, one of my most popular clients lost over 100 pounds and got stage lean and looked pretty good despite having lost so much weight and being a very short person. And, I do think that there are a lot of people who are kind of looking for answers. And if a lot of people saw her prep, they'd be like, she was too low. Well, like, where would we have gotten had we not gone that low? And because we were that low, we were changing other things like not training 7 days a week. And actually, currently, one of the pros who's working with me right now, she was training a ton and doing a ton of cardio. She has a lot of muscle mass, and I'm like, why are we doing this much training? Your job is to get lean. If we keep your glutes full and just stimulate the muscle tissue, we're doing some really short, small workouts about 3 times a week and 1 day with the newbie on her glutes. And then the rest is really cardio. And she's already dropped 4 pounds with doing less training. We never even increased her cardio. We gave her a little more carbs to support recovery, and she was also sick too, so we had to rework that. But she is losing more by the active recovery, better sleep. So this is where those things are really important. Yes, you don't want to just grind somebody into the ground. You want to support good training and good recovery as much as possible. But you are probably going to have to go low, and people are just going to have to wake up and smell the coffee. If you're not genetically gifted, that's going to kind of be how it is. A coach can't really change your genetics. However, I do think there's a lot of people who are ignoring internal health, which is causing them to have to do a lot more than maybe they would need to do. So there's that component as well.
Yeah, there's so many thoughts I'm having. I mean, I think speaking from being one of those people who gains more and then also has to do a lot to get the weight down, regardless of how on point I am,
Yeah.
it is just the way it is for me. Yet we have explored some internal things that we're hoping allows us to reverse higher, get in a better starting point for prep, and then come down. But I want to address two questions that came up. So I'm going to go to this one first. Do you think that certain food cravings can be an indication of vitamins and mineral deficiency?
I think that can be a couple things. I do think that that can be, yes. So you absolutely could, crave something because you have a deficiency. I also think people tend to crave things that they're mistracking. So let's say a product that you're eating is over calorically and you're measuring it differently. I think your body will automatically start craving that based on the fact you're making, let's say, a nutrition error by 15 grams of carbs. Your body's smart and you're doing macros. So all of a sudden you're eating 5 servings of that a day because it fits, but you don't know it's 15 grams of carbs over each time you eat it. You hit a stall. And we sometimes do see that with weight loss plateaus and clients, that they maybe added a food that wasn't calorically correct, or those miracle needles. They really are a miracle because they're not real. A lot of my clients start eating those because they're zero and they're like, I'm craving these things. They buy hundreds of them and then they stop losing weight because they're calorically higher than the zero that's on the package.
So keeping it simple and being mindful of what you're tracking and what your body needs is important because that could be encouraging cravings. And of course, I think cravings can come from a lot of different things as well, maybe from an emotional standpoint. But I think that answers your question as far as if it can come from a need. And then we had Perla ask, can you talk more about being hormonally optimized before starting prep?
Yeah. So what we're looking for there is a normal estrogen to progesterone ratio. So, typically if you have like a 12 on your progesterone, you would want a 120 estradiol roughly, or maybe a tad bit lower. So you want to basically be, at a pretty good ratio of progesterone estradiol. You want to see testosterone levels come up. So you want to look a little bit beyond standard blood work ranges because they are used to measuring girls on birth control and just, you know, there's all these ranges that you're looking at. So you really do want to make sure that you are, within the correct ranges for progesterone, estrogen, testosterone. Also, like, is DHEA high? You might have an adrenal issue, or is it low? So you're really looking at all these things. Even nutrient deficiencies can sometimes influence hormones to not be in the best spot. So you might be deficient in D, and bumping that up can help maybe progesterone, estrogen, and tests climb up. So it definitely makes a big difference.
I just read this comment about Brandon craving peanut butter every prep.
I did too. And I think I have an answer to why a lot of people measure in tablespoons and not grams. So it's again the theory of you're getting a little bit more fat than you really should be off the grams, and people, it also does taste good, but I really do think a lot of people tend to not measure it in grams. That kind of stopped me in my tracks because I was like, I know
I know,
exactly why
I
this
thought you were.
happens.
I was like, did we both just read that? Everyone's saying they love peanut butter. You know what I have found with my clients who obsess over peanut butter, fixate on it, really crave it, is the type of peanut butter that they're eating generally has additional ingredients that are sugars and or flavors in a certain way that gets you thinking like, oh my gosh, this is so good. And it can be a heightened experience compared to, other foods that you might be eating because of that. So my recommendation would be, if your peanut butter is something that's calling your name, yes, of course, keep it in your program and try to work it in. If it's becoming a problem, that's a different story. You should work to resolve that. However, if you're finding that it's like a lot of sweet ingredients, try just the plain natural one and put it into like a different type of meal. So if you associate it with like cravings for sweet things or always thinking about it, try throwing it into a savory meal. And I think that can help too. And also, like, it is good, as you said, the texture is different than most of the things we're eating on a prep too, which I think plays a role. But I appreciate you covering for Perla, the hormonal aspect, which I started wondering as you were explaining that. I was like, I wonder if there's certain things Adam has seen, like, okay, on a consistent basis, someone has presented with a problem of, let's say, their weight is climbing at a rate that doesn't make sense for what they're reporting, and you can trust them, or their weight is declining and it doesn't make sense. Are there certain scenarios you've seen play out consistently that have a similar cause with multiple different people?
Yeah, so when you're seeing things like that, you're usually seeing some kind of like inaccuracy, right? So, if weight's rising really, really quickly and you're trying to hit the brakes as a coach and it's not happening, a lot of people want to blame hormones. And yes, they're probably not optimized, but we do have to realize, I always hate saying this because it's like the best example I can think to do it, but we have a sad history of what happens if you don't eat enough. And believe me, those people were hormonally
Mm.
suppressed. Would they look good for a bodybuilding show? No. But if weight is going up, like, something is wrong. Now, we may want to look into a thyroid issue or something like that. But in generalities, when we're seeing someone losing and then all of a sudden it goes the other way, well, maybe the hormone issue is causing anxiety and causing them to overeat. That could be a possibility, but it's not necessarily the hormones that. And even though I'm someone who preaches how important hormones are and how it can help you get there, we are not swinging the hormonally healthy club when we're dieting. And anyone who says they're doing it, they're probably on TRT or they're just really a genetic freak. But I really doubt that that's happening. So people are not hormonally, you know, perfect when they're shredded for like the Olympia or any other show, you know, when they win their class at least. So maybe if they didn't get lean enough, they might be hormonally healthy. So, and then in the case of if somebody's losing too fast, there could be a case of under eating, under reporting, but we should be able to add calories and be able to kind of stop that in its tracks as well.
Yeah, I think that bodybuilding, as challenging as it can be, and that it really is unhealthy at those stages, especially, it's also a great reviewer. Like it shows us so much about ourselves, our mindset, and also our body and its needs, like things that maybe we previously ignored because it's laser focused and we're every single day we're executing on something related to our physique or our body or our function or our performance. We become attuned to notice things more as well. And we can use that strength into an improvement season when maybe we notice things are changing. I think the biggest issue that happens is people just use prep as an excuse to go on autopilot. So they don't pay attention to any of those things. And then when they are challenged in some way like this, they're not willing to really look at, is it a tracking error? Well, no way, because I track well, it could be, right? Are we willing to be mindful and maybe step back and consider that? And then I love that Giancarlo wants to jump in here and talk. That, if you have anything to contribute, we'd love to hear it. And going back to Brandon's point too, he's like, protein bars, awesome. And then after the show, terrible. I think that's another common thing. We get that dieter's tongue. It tastes really good, or we get used to having those things that just maybe curb our cravings or an appetite or something. But after the show, we don't care about it. And the same thing goes for if you're having like this post-show desire to just eat everything, right? And you're going super fast. You have this impulsive, think about yourself in like 8 weeks. Like there's going to be a chance, or even 4 months, 5 months. You're going to walk down the Walmart aisles and you're not going to be fazed by the bakery. During your prep, you're like drooling, walking by, you're like, oh, I'm going to try that and I'm going to try this. But generally, fast forward in your improvement season, you could really like not care at all. Like you really just, it's cool. I could try a bite and move on. So sometimes we have to recognize like where we're at in the process is likely influencing our psychological desire to eat more or indulge.
I think too, sometimes we feel sorry for ourselves and we know what we're doing and, we go over and we deserve to be able to exit toxic situations and toxic, mind patterns. And, as much as a client will tell me is as much as I can help them. And they just have to know anything we talk about doesn't have to be discussed on the daily check-in call. They can email me and tell me everything, or they can set up a one-on-one Zoom, or they can set them up weekly if they're really going through some struggles. So we've really set up the coaching program so people can get the hand holding that they need if they feel they need it. Now, of course, they need to pay a little bit more for that, but we made it really affordable for people to have a weekly private call with me if they need to. And actually, for a lot of some of these tougher reverses, a lot of people have committed to that. And I feel like I've not really had any bad reverses this year because people are kind of armed and ready for what's to come. And I think a lot of that's because me and you put out a lot of content about this, and my people are aware of how important this is.
Yeah, it's not something we're just pretending doesn't exist and it's going to be fine. Like we're actually saying, okay, this could come up and this could happen. And I think it speaks to your approach as well. Like even though you push your clients and you get us where you need us to, it's within reason. Like you know how to monitor and make adjustments based on what's happening. So that's a thing that you're doing for people is you're not just saying, yeah, get on this plan and diet yourself down and be destroyed after, and then we'll see how you do. You're like, how are we preemptively preparing? And as far as, when you are post show and you're experiencing this change, having that accountability from your coach is key, because so many people maybe want to stop checking in, want to stop submitting their photos or filling out their sheets. So knowing that their coach is there, right there with them, saying, hey, we got this, we can make changes or adjustments, that's really important. And in the program I offer, we're talking consistently, like every single day they're submitting something to me, we're keeping in touch. I'm identifying patterns with them that we can get ahead of, because if we want to make changes, we need to break the patterns that have created a lot of those negative cycles in our life.
Mm-hmm.
As the toxicity is we're escaping, whether it's a relationship or a negative relationship with food or is body image. It's important to identify what is the pattern. So when you're working closely with someone, they have eyes now on your life where they can see a pattern you might not be ready to see yet, because in all honesty, many of us fall into these patterns because somehow they contribute to our life.
Right.
Somehow they benefit us or protect us. So we have to recognize that and then be willing to work through it.
Yeah. You kind of have to choose your heart too, are you going to struggle with a little bit of diet adherence? And I think about the people who they're tired of balancing their checkbook at the end of the day. And some people are like, I don't want to track anymore. But in real life situations, there's things that just aren't forever taken care of. And think of the mom with 4 kids, and no matter how bad that checkbook is, it might be getting in the negative, she still has to do it at the end of the day. Well, now we have automated checking, but we really do have to think of that. And I think of a situation I just had where I kind of had the post-contest fleer, where we had a couple rougher check-ins and then just was gone. I kind of reached out a couple times, and after a bit, I'm just like, you know what? They may not necessarily need me right now, and that's okay. They need to kind of figure it out. But then when they come back, I don't say what happened, like, they may tell me, but I think the point is if they gained a lot of weight, you get them back to a good spot, and then you say, all right, so I really want to start talking about, now that we're almost back to contest season again, what we're going to do about our exit. Because I'm still not going to say those trigger words of what happened back in 2021, because they already feel like that's a failure. But how can we do better as a team this time? Because I really want to protect you from going through all that stress that I didn't get to help you through the last time we did this together,
That's such a good point. There's so many people who are, unfortunately, like, they have their past held against them, and their coach is like, well, you binged last time, so I'm going to make sure we cut out all of this, or I'm not going to let you have that. And they create these rules because I think that the coach gets afraid of being part of the problem, that they're like, I'm just going to make sure that we identify that this happened and then do such extreme measures to prevent it. But the likelihood that your client has grown and learned from that experience is higher than that they haven't, because they came back to you, right? They came back, they're ready to make a change. So they've already identified something happened. Now, personally, I don't think it's ever a good idea, if you're coming off of binging or restricting or any sort of disordered eating, to use prep as a way to resolve it or fix it. And when people, say that they want to get back on a prep, it's generally because that's their time when they feel most in control, and they only have strong associations with getting the results that they want when they're under extreme control and guidance. So I personally think it's a lot about, we need to rebuild efficacy too. I think, you do a great job, and this is not against what you said, this is just also my personal look at it, is like, we have to rebuild the efficacy when a client goes that way. And like you said, we're not holding it against them. We're just like, let's just rebuild that confidence, that courage. You're not this person you were in your last prep. That's okay. We just need to rebuild you to the point where now everything that we're committing to feels really good and empowering, versus like white knuckling in and trying to get it figured out and control yourself. That's not helpful for the longevity. If anything, it's going to make for probably an even worse rebound experience, because now it's happening again. You feel like you're not in control of your own choices and everything has to be monitored.
Yeah. And I think one thing that's tough about coaching clients, no matter how many Zooms they're on with me, you know, with the group, and they get to hear how I respond to check-ins, no matter how much I do that, they still have whatever their old coach's way of responding was in the back of their head as a fear, or even just program dynamics. Like, I'm afraid to ask for a change in this exercise because my old coach would just say, trust the process or follow the plan. And it's literally, you know, when you are paying for coaching, you're not paying for a meal plan coach or a macro coach. You're paying for a coach, and a coach will follow through and give you either or, whatever is going to make you most successful. And, you know, that was one of my goals of our podcast, was to teach people it's not about meal plan or macros. It's about coaching. It's about relationships. It's about management, personal, bodybuilding, physical, especially on the pro level. You know, they're picking out sponsors. Like, who do you want in your corner, and why? You know, we kind of had the macro thing figured out. We've probably reverse dieted multiple times. We can start putting our energy into other things, you know?
Right. It's like an amateur might need to focus on one thing, a pro would be focused on another, and every client is going to be in a different stage. Another good example of why we can't be comparing to where others are at in their journey, because we have to respect whatever path they've been on prior and their own history. But I do think that that's important, is not comparing and also being willing to talk to your coach. And one other thing that was mentioned in the comments, and we can kind of end on this note, they said that body dysmorphia is a struggle for them some days. So I think this is very common, especially both in prep and improvement season. In prep, when you get closer to a show, a lot of the times you're looking really lean. A lot of women express that they don't like how sucked in their face gets. They don't really like having a flatter booty, even though it looks great on stage when they pose. There's discomfort too. You know, sometimes they maybe have a connection to a past experience that when they see their body looking a certain way, it takes them there. And so it kind of exposes them to uncomfortable things. And then you go into improvement season, and like you said earlier, you're starting to see changes you haven't been celebrating. Like, you were celebrating weight going down, now it's going up. Your body fat's coming on, lines are disappearing versus showing up, veins are disappearing versus popping, you know? So we have to expect that these things are likely to happen just because of what we're doing. And something that has helped me with body image that I shared a lot when we did our podcast and different things. So one other thing that I would say is, when you consider what stage you're at, what journey you're at, always think about the way your body is performing and showing up for you. Start looking at your body less like the physique on stage that you're being judged for, and more like the machine that's allowing that to happen, like the performance, the athlete version of you. What are you capable of doing? Because you can look amazing and feel horrible, and you can look less than your best and feel amazing and be crushing it in the gym. So I like to emphasize prioritizing, celebrating, and enjoying the process and what has actually happen to allow your body to show up for you, and being grateful for that. So when we are going through a physique change, whether in prep or improvement season, our grounding factor is, how do we feel and function? Yeah, you're going to feel like some days in prep, but that's part of the process too. So it's like, how do we show up for our bodies? How does our body show up for us? And having gratitude that we're able to do this process.
Absolutely. Did you say this person felt the dysmorphia more in prep versus off season?
They didn't, they experience it. So
Okay. Yeah. I think also too, you kind of have to look deep into, why are we experiencing the dysmorphia? So is it when we're looking in the mirror? Are we being hard on ourselves? Are we maybe not getting affirmations from people, and we sometimes have an expectation from it? Maybe it's a husband or spouse hasn't said anything and you want them to. Maybe you could ask for that. And a lot of people are afraid to ask for things, and I think it's okay if you want to be complimented, to ask for it, so then the person's aware. um, you know and also, you know, are kind of like you said, are you dieting down and your butt's flatter? You know, well, we know that in the act of getting lean, we're probably going to store less glycogen. Is that going to come back when we peak? Maybe we're kind of swinging some different golf clubs later to fix that issue. I see it a lot of times when guys diet down, they'll get a couple weeks in and they're like, oh, I'm not as big as I thought
Mhm.
I was. Well, you know, great. Hang on to that flag until we go into the off season and then really nail that. So just, you know, we'll take care of that later. Let's still finish the intended goal, but realize how you felt in your first 4 weeks of dieting. And we maybe have 10 to 15 more weeks to go. And we're going to probably get even smaller. So just kind of hang on to that emotion and use it as a gym fuel later on in your season.
Yeah, if anything, it makes you just want to like get that pump, fuel yourself, make sure you're getting all your boxes checked, and then go into your improvement season and crush it. Like, you know, you get to that point as a competitor too, where before you even step on stage, you already know what needs to improve. And that's one of the beautiful things about this sport, is it challenges us to continuously chase something better, and we thrive off of the pursuit of things. It is one of the most gratifying things for us as human beings, let alone athletes who maybe are naturally driven towards that or desire that for themselves. So the other thing too about body dysmorphia or body image is, as you said, you know, communication and how are people talking to you? How are you talking? I also think we have to teach people how to talk to us about our body. A lot of the times, the reason it's reinforced in prep is because we're allowing it to happen. And in improvement season, those same people think that it's okay to comment on your body. If you don't want to hear improvement season comments about your body, you got to monitor those prep comments about your body. And we shared some communication strategies in the series, but it's important to communicate to someone, hey, you know what? I'm so glad you see the hard work that I'm putting in on my physique. I'm like 3 weeks out for my show. I haven't been sleeping well. Can you ask me tomorrow how I'm sleeping? We want to encourage a different conversation. We want to help other people see how to communicate with us. If your husband or your wife is always saying, wow, you look so, so good, but it's only when you're lean, and that starts to make you feel like you're only worthy when you're lean, communicate that with them. Like, oh, your support means so much. I know you see me putting in the work every day. I'm curious if your perception of me changes in prep versus improvement season, and how does that affect how you see me? Have an open dialogue with the people in your life who you're comfortable having these conversations with, and set very strong, firm boundaries with the people you don't want making comments. If you have people commenting on your body all improvement season, or maybe you've gained weight, or you don't look like you just competed, that can be painful to hear, but we need to take some personal responsibility and see how did we facilitate conversations in prep that led them to believe that that type of commentary was okay.
Absolutely. You know, I'm speaking with someone now that might work with me that's actually a fashion designer. I thought, how amazing must it be to get a compliment or maybe a bad review on the clothes you created? Because you're just like, I can change my clothes.
Mm.
And we can change our bodies too, but it's not as fast as going to the closet. So those comments hurt a little bit more. And it's just like, I love your motto, more than just a body. Like, we really shouldn't be, you know, judging people on their body or their clothes. And like, get to know people and get to know who they are, and you'll just live like a really blessed life. One of the things I love about being in Vegas is how many of my competitors I've gotten to meet. We go out to dinner, and I just realize how much more there are to these amazing competitors that we're working with. And even though I knew that ahead of time, you get to meet their spouses, you get to
Mm.
see the support the person has behind the the body, right? And that's so cool to see.
I love that. Yeah, that's what this is about, is there's so much more to people than sometimes the industry presents. We're all stepping on stage after working so, so hard, and we are judged for the physique. But on a day-to-day basis, what matters more is the type of person you are and the people you have in your life. And developing those relationships is so beautiful. And I think that the better coaching relationships are the ones where you do know and understand the people you're working with. Like, I feel that me and you have a great connection, and that makes me trust you more. That makes me feel more excited to check in and talk with you. And I see that, you know, in the comments as well from other people you're working with. So you practice what you preach, and I also feel that you're not the type of coach to be like, well, I just want you to win, and so whatever it takes to win. And I'm just going to put your body through it. And I don't really care about your life or your lifestyle. We're just going to get a pro card so I can add that to my roster, my list, my resume. So I think that's valuable because more people will go far. And I want to say thank you guys for joining and for your sweet comments as well. So Adam, do you have anything else you want to add or address?
I don't think so. Just thank you guys for joining. If you want to hear any more content from us, let us know. Maybe we can put some more stuff out there for you guys, or maybe there's more you want to explore in our minds. So this was fun to do.
Yeah, it was so fun. So you guys go to our YouTubes. It's See You Later Leaner for Adam. It's Celestial_Fit for me. And we both posted the series, so they are there. And then we've done different podcast episodes too on Confessions of a Bikini Pro. So if you just want to dive all into it, feel free to message me. I'll send you the links directly if you need them. And then, yeah, let us know your feedback. If you want us to do anything else, tell us. We'd love to. And just thank you guys for staying the entire time too, for those of you who did, and for participating and showing love. Like, that's so cool. That's what makes these conversations even better. So thank you guys so much. And Adam, I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. We'll see you guys soon.
All right, bye.
Bye.